guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to today's video. In today's video we're talking the 10 things that I'm doing differently in my second pregnancy. So I'm sat in my probably favourite place in the house right now, which is my bed, my pregnancy pillow, my second cup of tea of the day, still within the caffeine window I think. Don't shoot me if I'm not. And I was just about to go through basically everything that I'm doing slightly differently in my second pregnancy in comparison to my first. So it might be a really obvious thing to say, but my life is so incredibly different this time round than it was my first time round. See, baby brain, that's something that definitely is the same. In my first pregnancy, it was 2020. The world went a bit crazy and you know, it was very, very different. So my circumstances then in my first pregnancy were that my husband, my then boyfriend, was away on deployment. He was with the military away in another country for 6 months, so he was not around during my pregnancy whatsoever. I was in lockdown, living with my parents in a rural place in Dorset, not living at my own house, and obviously, yeah, the world at that point in time was just a bit mad. So that was my circumstances then. I was obviously working from home, but it was pretty quiet work-wise because of the pandemic, whereas this time around in 2023, my husband is around, although he still works away during the week. He comes back on the weekends. Obviously I have a toddler, which is very, very different. We live in our own house though, that we own, so we can make changes to it if we want to, which we are doing. Work, I now only work 4 days a week rather than 5 days a week, but on the day that I don't work, I obviously have my toddler around, and I go into the office once a week as well, which is in London, so it's a little bit further away for me to travel in. So my circumstances are very different and life is very different. I literally didn't leave the house for 2, 3, 4 months other than my daily walk in my first pregnancy, whereas now I'm living my life and I'm doing the things I used to do, cracking on, being a mum to a toddler. Life is just very, very different. So that's the outline of the circumstances in each of my pregnancies. Obviously then those things come into account when you're thinking about things that you're going to be doing differently. But these are the top 10 things that I am doing differently in my second pregnancy. Right, I'm going to put my tea down because I've had a few gulps of it. But basically, the first thing that I am doing differently, second time around, is to take my time with baby shopping. And the reason I say that is because I definitely overbought in my first pregnancy. I am only also 24 weeks pregnant. Let me give you a little bump date. So yeah, I'm only 24 weeks as we speak. So I still kind of feel like I'm early days. It's not early days, it's sort of coming towards the middle end of my second trimester. I know my first pregnancy at this point I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get everything prepared really, really quickly. I need to be prepared, but in reality I really didn't. It was just more, to be honest, again, excitement for my first child, boredom as well because we were in lockdown. I didn't have much else going on, and also just this time I am busy and I don't quite know what we need because I've got so many baby things from my first child that I need to go through all of those things, make a list. I love a list. I did all of these things in my first pregnancy, but I did them quite early on. So yeah, I definitely am taking my time with buying baby stuff. Also, I don't want to waste money. Things are a lot more expensive this time. Just life is more expensive, bills, childcare costs, everything else. I don't want to waste money on things I don't necessarily need. And I am also aware of the fact that a lot of the things that we bought last time we didn't use, we didn't need. I think I'm going to go bare minimum and then buy things if we need them. There's no need to have everything prepared all at once beforehand. So yeah, that's my first thing that I'm definitely doing differently this pregnancy. The next thing that I'm doing differently is definitely about advice. I am taking advice with a pinch of salt this time. I think last time I was very, very open to hearing every single person's advice on pregnancy, on newborns, and what I should be doing, because as a first time mum, you don't know anything. Even if, you know, you've grown up around kids and your friends have all had kids, until you've had a child yourself, there is little to nothing you can learn until you're just in the trenches and learning it for yourself. And especially because every baby and every circumstance, every mum, every dad is so different that you cannot learn from other people's experiences, really, because your experience might be completely different. I think the thing is also where I'm on Instagram a lot and I'm sort of on YouTube and things like that, I would say things on camera that people would, you know, perceive to be naive of me and tell me that, and then tell me the complete opposite information that I'd read somewhere else. You are taking in so much information from so many different places, friends, family, strangers on the internet, articles that you're reading, your midwife, the doctors sometimes have completely different advice from midwives. It's just a bit of a minefield sometimes. I definitely took on so much information last time that it kind of just stressed me out, to be honest. I think there's a difference between being prepared for something and knowing, you know, what is to come, and then there's kind of over preparing and trying to control a situation too much that it can kind of stress you out and bring on that anxiety. And I think that's probably where I was in my first pregnancy, whereas this time I'm just not. I'm a lot more confident in my ability as a person, as a mum. I just trust myself and my instincts a lot more, and whether that's going to be for stuff to have for the baby, what to do when the baby's here, but also during my pregnancy, what to eat, what not to eat. I'm basically just following the guidelines on the NHS website, and if someone tells me otherwise, then I'm kind of like, okay, you know, fine. But if I have an extra coffee in a day, it's not going to kill me. But yeah, I just think I'm just taking all the advice that I'm getting from every which way about every single thing you could possibly think of, whether that's how many clothes to buy, in what sizes, what time to do the nursery, how to prepare George, our first son, for having a baby sister, all of those kind of things. I kind of just want to do it my way, and yeah, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with feeling like I know myself as a mum enough, and trusting myself definitely more so than I did last time. The third thing that I'm doing differently this pregnancy, is probably the biggest thing actually, is asking for help when I need it. And that can be in loads of different circumstances. So medical help, so going to the doctors, asking help from friends and family, whether that's emotional support or just support with, you know, helping with my toddler. Basically, I'm asking for help and I don't feel weak because I'm asking for help. Whereas last time, again, my partner wasn't around, and any time that I would sort of kind of need that support in a different way, I wouldn't ask for it. I wouldn't want to feel weak or seem like I wasn't coping, or that the, you know, the stresses of a pandemic were getting me down. I didn't want to seem like I couldn't cope because I was worried about the effects of that after having my baby, like whether, you know, if I mentioned that to a doctor or something, even just in a passing comment on my midwife, that they would like take my baby away from me or something ridiculous. I really wasn't even that bad looking back, but I thought at the time, if I show any sign of weakness, they're gonna like, you know, have to watch me at all times, and if I slip up once, and they're gonna like, you know, have me on like social services lists or something. That's genuinely what I thought. So I definitely am much more chill about that this time, because I know that that's just not the case at all. When it comes to health, for example, my health last time and my health this time, I was really, really sick in my first pregnancy and didn't ask for help. I was really, really sick in this pregnancy and I asked for help. And oh my goodness, did I ask for help as soon as I should have? No, but I did. And when I did, it absolutely saved me. And I think having that extra push of having a toddler and actually know I need to be on my best form because I need to look after my toddler, pushed me to go to the doctors and ask for, in this case it was the anti-sickness tablets. So I suffered with a really bad sickness in both pregnancies, but in this pregnancy I asked for anti-sickness tablets. I was very honest with them and said, look, I cannot keep water, food down. I was fainting every time I was being sick because I didn't have the energy. I asked for anti-sickness tablets and they gave them to me within like 24 hours. So it genuinely saved me. If anyone is struggling with sickness, severe sickness, obviously go to the doctors and blah, blah, blah. But if you want anti-sickness tablets and you feel like you need it, ask for them. I went on a pill called cyclizine, I want to say, and it absolutely saved me. If you type in anti-sickness tablets, it's like the first one that comes up on the NHS website. a dream come true. Secondly, in terms of my health in my second trimester, towards the end of my second trimester, I've been suffering really, really badly with acid reflux. And I say really badly, I couldn't sleep, I was crying, I was in agony, I was being sick constantly, and my sick felt like lava. It was horrendous. And I don't think I would have asked for help before. I probably would have like stuck to the Gaviscon, which was the thing that was making me sick as well. And I would have tried to do all the dietary things, which is exactly what I did this time. And I did that for a week, and then I was like, I am not doing this anymore because it was too painful, and I need to be in my best form for my child. And you know what, I went to the doctors and I said all of this, I told them all the steps I had taken, and they said, okay, we can prescribe you some acid reflux medication, here you go, told me the dosage, and that was done within 24 hours. I would not have done that in my first pregnancy. Again, think of the context, it was early days in a pandemic. Of course I didn't want to put more pressure on the NHS than I needed to. There was a lot of that guilt. I did not want to put any more strain on the doctors than I had to. Also, I wasn't actually registered in the place that I was living because I was living in Dorset with my parents, so there was that as well. But if I actually really needed to, I should have gone to the doctors, and I didn't. And this time I did. I did everything that I could do, but then I went to the doctors, and I don't feel guilty for that in the slightest. I don't feel guilty for being on medication. I don't feel guilty for any of it. I needed it, and that's what I did. If anyone is struggling with really severe acid reflux, then I am on a medication called omeprazole. I don't think that's how you say it, but it's an acid reflux medication, and they've said that it's safe for pregnancy as well, so that is what I am on. But yes, that in terms of my like health, that is how I would ask for support, and I wouldn't have asked for that in the past, in my previous pregnancy. With friends and family, emotional support. Again, I'm not that person that reaches out for emotional support at the best of times, but in pregnancy, when everything is just a lot in terms of your hormones and the stresses that are on you, and obviously when you're a second time mum, you've already got a child to look after, work pressures, being sick, all of these things, sometimes you just need a bit of a hug and a bit of emotional support, and it's fine to ask for that. Again, you're not weak for doing that. If anything, it makes you stronger to reach out to the people that love you to ask for that support. So that's what I'm doing this time round, and I am so grateful that I'm in a place now where I can ask for that support, because first time around again, yeah, I just didn't. The fourth thing that I'm doing differently this pregnancy is tracking my diet more closely. And when I say that, I'm not meaning for weight gain or anything like that at all. I am just trying to be genuinely healthier in this pregnancy for many reasons. Mainly actually at the moment because of my heartburn. I don't want to make it worse through my diet, so basically anything with oil, acid, like fat at all, anything like that, basically I shouldn't be eating, because it does trigger acid reflux and heartburn. So obviously that's a reason that I'm tracking my diet in that way. And just so happens that the things like chocolate and tomato sauces and things like that are the things that I was like living on before I got my acid reflux. So yeah, I'm tracking my diet because of that, but I'm also just tracking it because I'm really craving sweet stuff at the moment. So like I would absolutely smash a dairy milk right now, but I know that I can't do that because the amount of sugar I was consuming was a bit intense, and also the fat from the chocolates obviously doesn't help my acid reflux and my heartburn. So I'm trying to basically go for like healthier sweet options. So for example, I'm just like literally living on fruit, like raisins because they're really sweet, like putting loads of fruit together, mixing it all up, bit of porridge, blueberries, like yogurt, that kind of stuff. I know it sounds really boring, and it is a little bit boring, but it's better, like for me, it's better to have something like hitting that sweet spot than, you know, dying at night because I've got like acid reflux and I can't sleep or all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm tracking my diet, trying to be a bit healthier than I was in my first pregnancy, and it's sort of going okay. Obviously sometimes I do slip up, but you know what, like I obviously have to give myself some grace because I am pregnant. But definitely first time round I overindulged and sort of just didn't really care, because I was very much of the impression like, I'm pregnant, I can do whatever I want. And this time around I'm just more conscious of the fact that yes, putting things into your body is going to have effects in whatever way that was, whether that's because of heartburn, weight gain, you know, spots, anything like that. I just want to avoid that if I can, and yeah, I'm just a bit more conscious of it this time, I think. The next thing that I'm doing differently in my second pregnancy is saving more money, way more money. So in my first pregnancy, I had a goal of saving £2,500 for maternity leave, because I knew, well, in my head I was like, I am only taking off 9 months of maternity leave. The first 6 months from my job was fully paid, which I know is an amazing maternity leave, by the way. I've got this time around as well, which I just am so incredibly grateful for. It's one of the main reasons I have this job, I'm not gonna lie, because the benefits like maternity leave are just incredibly good. And then I knew that I was only going to be taking 3 months off on statutory maternity pay, and I knew that the maternity pay was about £600 a month, so I knew how much money I had to make up with savings to pay bills, etc. So that time I knew like those were my expenses and that's how much I had to save. That was fine. This time round, I would like to take longer off work. My bills are more expensive. I've got childcare costs to contend with. So yeah, I have a lot more outgoings, and I know that I need to save a lot more because I would like to take off more time from work than I did my first time round. I don't think I was ready to go back to work when I went back to work with my first. I don't want to be in that position again. I just want to take my time and be in a position where finances aren't the reason that I'm going back to work, if I go back to work at all. So I just give myself the best chance to be with my baby for as long as I possibly can, and my toddler. I'm hoping that George can also cut down a little bit in his childcare, in terms of like how long he goes in for, because I won't be working, so he won't have to go in for as long hours, as many days, and see how it goes. And if I'm in a financial position where I can do that, then that's obviously just taking the pressure off, because it's a big deal, finances, and I just want to put myself in the best position I can be so that I can make a decision not solely based on finances when it comes to going back to work and all of those kind of things. So yeah, saving more money is definitely something that I'm doing very differently this pregnancy. The next thing that I'm doing differently this pregnancy is actually just forgetting that I'm pregnant most of the time. Obviously I've mentioned like the sickness and the heartburn and the indigestion and the acid reflux and all of that stuff. Yes, those things happen. But once I've taken my medication and I don't feel like that anymore, I forget. I honestly forget most of the time. I just think, again, last time when it's all I could possibly think about was being pregnant. This is my life. I'm so excited. It's the biggest thing that's ever happened, which it obviously is you know, in your first pregnancy, it's the biggest thing that's ever happened, right? This time, I already have a toddler, I'm working a lot, and I'm trying to juggle so many different things. My head is not constantly about this pregnancy. It's just not. Obviously, when things like when the baby kicks and when I'm struggling to get up the stairs or I'm out of breath, or, you know, things remind me. But when I look in the mirror sometimes I think, oh my gosh, yeah, pregnant. It's just funny. It's just really funny. And then sometimes, like, when, for example, I got in the bath with George the other day, my toddler, and he was just like, Mummy, like, he just looked at my belly and he was like, whoa, that's you. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm normally just wearing like leggings and a jumper. Like, if you looked at me now, you wouldn't necessarily think that I was pregnant. Obviously to the side, if I'm wearing tight clothes or not jumpers and stuff, you can tell. But I just forget a lot of the time, because it's not all consuming in my brain at the moment. I've just got so many other things going on that it doesn't, yeah, it's just not the first thing that I think about. So I feel quite normal most of the time, which is quite nice. But yeah, it's just one of those things. The next thing that I'm doing very differently this pregnancy is not Googling and stressing over every little symptom so much. Every single thing that happened to me in my first pregnancy, I would Google it straight away. I'd be on the phone to my midwife straight away. I would stress about it. I would ask people on Instagram what, you know, their experiences was. I was on like the Peanut app, for example, like, you know, asking all of these questions. I'm definitely not as anxious this time in terms of like my symptoms and things like that. For example, in my first pregnancy, I was told that I am Rhesus negative, which basically means that I have a certain blood type, which is Rhesus negative. So my blood type is O negative. And if the baby has a Rhesus positive blood type, so something positive, then our blood types aren't compatible, and my body would produce antibodies to fight off the baby's blood, which could possibly lead to it basically hurting the baby, in a very, very non-medical term way of saying it. But normally it's fine. It's only if the bloodstreams cross. That can happen if you like knock your belly, or during labour, or in your second pregnancy, things like that. Anyway, I was so stressed about it. I made a video about it at the time. You can go back on my channel and watch any of my pregnancy videos from my first time round, that I haven't even been doing this time round, because to be honest, it's the last thing on my brain to do a pregnancy update video. But I was really stressed about it at the time, and this time around I have exactly the same thing. I have to go and get this massive needle injection called the anti-D injection, which basically stops my blood from fighting off the baby's blood. This baby is also Rhesus positive, as was George, so I've got to have this horrible injection, and that's the thing that I don't love this, but equally I'm like, I've gone through labour, I've had this injection before, I don't like injections, but before I had a baby, I would have been like, oh my god, I've got to have this injection, it's going to be terrible. I hate needles, I hate them. But I've had a baby, and I've pushed a human out, and I've, you know, I've been in a worse position than that, so I'm just going to go, and I'm going to have this horrible needle shoved into my leg, which I think is where they put it last time, and I'm not stressing about it, and I'm not worried about it at all, because I've been through it before. Thousands, millions of women have been through it before. It's kind of fine, and I'm kind of taking that approach with all of my symptoms, really, unless I'm like really worried. Like I had a little bit of blood in my sick the other day from when I was being sick with my acid reflux, which prompted me to call the doctors. I called the doctors, I said the situation, and they gave me medication, and now I'm fine with it. Like, you know, if it's an ongoing issue, you kind of have a gut feeling, like whether you know something's wrong or not. And if you're like, oh, I'm not sure if something's wrong, I'm just not in that space anymore. Whereas in my first pregnancy, I definitely was. The next thing that I'm doing differently in this pregnancy is actually not sharing the baby's name before they're born. You don't actually have a name. However, I have a name. I've had a name in my head that I would like to call this baby for the last maybe 3-4 weeks, and I've said it to Ash, and he's not like in love with it, but he's not coming up with any other options. So you know what, that's the baby's name as far as I'm concerned, until he tells me like absolutely not, or he wants to, you know, come up with other names. But he just hasn't brought anything to the table, and he seems very relaxed about it, so I'm thinking that this is my baby's name. Anyway, I haven't told anyone, other than Ash obviously. I haven't told anyone, any friends, any family. I'm not going to do it, because last time we told all of our friends and family. We didn't tell like the online world, but I told all of my friends and family, and there were a few comments. Bit boring, George. It's a bit boring. Oh, like Peppa Pig's brother. And you think, nah, I don't really want that this time. I don't feel the need to share it. Obviously, I was very excited last time. And I am obviously really excited this time, but I just don't want people's opinions, and I don't really care about them either. Everyone that I would talk to would have a completely different opinion on the name George, for example. Some people love classic names, traditional names. Some people are like, oh my god, that's the most boring name ever. There's like a million other Georges in the world. Why would you do that? Like, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not your kid. It's not your name. Who cares? So that's the kind of approach I'm taking this time. Like, it really doesn't matter if I am in love with the name and I feel like it's going to go with George, and I feel like it's just the name that we want to choose, then I really don't know why I felt the need to tell people beforehand. So yeah, I'm just not going to share the name this time until the baby's here. The next thing that I'm doing differently in this pregnancy, in my second pregnancy, is trying not to stress about the future. And this is something that it doesn't come naturally to me, let me tell you. I am a planner, I am a control freak, like that is my personality, and I cannot really help that. However, I definitely think since having a child, and I'd say probably from the age of maybe 1, like after George wasn't a baby anymore, when he became a toddler, I've now just very much learned that you cannot control every situation, and you can't plan for every eventuality. People's emotions, and I'm thinking about a toddler here, are very unpredictable, and it's just, what will be will be. It's kind of fine, and I'm very much taking that approach with this pregnancy because, you know, 6 months ago, even 3 months ago, George was going through a bit of a behaviour thing where it just was really difficult with him, really, really difficult. And obviously I was pregnant, and, or at least we were trying to conceive and, you know, trying to conceive slash pregnant. I was really worried about, oh gosh, how are we going to do this when, you know, George is behaving like this, and then we're going to have another baby and it's going to be an absolute nightmare. How are we going to cope? How am I going to cope? What's going to happen? And then I just had a word with myself very early on and just thought, you know what, you cannot control every single situation. You can't plan for every eventuality. You stressing about this now is not going to solve anything in the long run. And I think definitely in the last 6 months, or at least since I became pregnant, I've realised that what will be, trying to take that kind of Zen approach and just not being toxic to yourself in your own brain. Sometimes it's a lot easier said than done. You have to be in the right headspace, I think. But you know what, actually, as it comes, George's behaviour is like massively improved. It's come with his speech as well, where he's like understanding a lot more what I'm telling him. He's communicating with us. It takes that stress out of him because he can tell me what he wants. I can give him what he wants most of the time, as long as it's not like chocolate cake for breakfast. If it's chocolate cake for afters, fine. I'm much more chilled in my approach to like the future. I don't feel like I've got to plan every micro thing that's going to happen. So yeah, that's definitely something that's very different to my first pregnancy. My first pregnancy, I had to make sure that I knew everything, and I was really stressed about how I was going to prepare bottles and how sterilising works. And I was thinking about this at like 20 weeks pregnant. It was just not healthy really. But again, pandemic, I was very I don't know, I think I was trying to like distract myself with this big thing of like having a baby and trying to be like this expert on something that I knew nothing about. And again, once you've had a baby, you realise that not everything goes to plan. You can't stress about naps and you can't stress about routines, even though I did definitely in my first pregnancy and my first, you know, year of having a baby really. I definitely know that I'm not going to be like that this time. I just can't be, because I'll drive myself insane. And then the 10th thing that I'm doing differently in my second pregnancy is not letting other people's opinions affect me as much. The thing is, and I've said this a few times in this video, I just feel like I know myself a lot more now. I trust myself as a mum. I trust my instincts. I think I'm a good parent, as much as obviously we all make mistakes all the time and we're always constantly learning. Generally, I think I know what I'm doing, and I think even if I don't, it's fine. I'm not worried so much about proving myself to other people or like what something looks like. If it's, you know, George having a tantrum in the middle of Tesco's, fine. It doesn't matter as much. Just because like Deirdre walks down and sort of tuts or whatever down the aisle, it doesn't really matter. It's not a big deal. Whereas again, even 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, I would have like been really stressed about that. A year ago, I probably wouldn't have even left the house with George on my own, like really. I remember we went to B&M once when he was about 18 months old and he kicked off big time. And I came home and had a meltdown because I didn't know how to deal with it. Whereas now, God, that's like a daily occurrence. That's totally fine. I worry less about people's opinions because, to be honest, there are more things for people to look at, and you know what, it's just like you get used to it. You get used to the eyes, you get used to the tuts, and you kind of go, yeah, okay, whatever. I've got bigger things to deal with than your opinions. So yeah, that's kind of my approach in this pregnancy as well, when people have lots of opinions about what you should do in terms of feeding and what you should do in terms of sleep. Sleep's a big one. What you should do in terms of, you know, how to introduce George to the baby and all of that kind of stuff, and also what you should be eating, what you shouldn't be eating, what medication you should and shouldn't be taking. Just people judge. It's like a way of life, right? People judge other people. It's just a fact of life. You try not to, but you've always got these little things in the back of your head where you judge other people. whether that's consciously or unconsciously. I personally try not to judge other people because I think it's almost impossible to put yourself in someone else's situation that you could even begin to understand why they've made a decision, why they've made a comment, why they've said this or thought this or do something a certain way. You aren't that person, so you can't. How can you even begin to judge? Do you know what I mean? Everyone is so different and everyone is entitled to do whatever they want to do in their own lives. As long as it's not affecting you and your personal boundaries, I kind of think it's nothing to do with you. And I kind of just think you shouldn't really even be thinking about other people's actions, to be honest. But I know that people do, and sometimes that's out of a really good place, like they're kind of trying to advise you to not do something this way and maybe you get a better outcome. Other times it's from a really dark place and people are just very unhappy people and unfortunately feel the need to impose that unhappiness onto other people, and it's a much more a reflection on them than it is you. But basically, I just don't care anymore. Whatever the reason is, whatever, you know, the opinion is, I kind of just don't worry about it as much anymore. So yeah, that's kind of my approach in this second pregnancy. Again, very different to my first pregnancy. I cared a lot about what people thought. I felt like I had to justify myself all the time. I just don't anymore. I think that's just something that comes with age and becoming a mum. You just kind of trust yourself more and care less about what people think. So yeah, anyway guys, those are the 10 things that I am doing differently in my second pregnancy. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I would love to know if you are pregnant, second time round, first time round. Let me know in the comments, third, fourth, fifth, let me know. And if there's anything that you're doing differently in your, you know, pregnancy that you weren't doing last time round, then I would love to know as well. But let me know it down in the comments. And for now, I'm gonna love you and leave you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!
'Cause you glue all the pieces back together. Yeah, you take all my wrongs and make them better. Yeah, you're making me wanna try forever. And I feel so free, oh my sweet baby.